Thank you guys for tuning in once again to the Young and Foolish podcast. This week, we have a pretty special episode. We actually have a guest with us today, but before we introduce our guest, I just want to kind of introduce a topic we're going to talk about. And I think it's really relevant, especially this summer, as the Olympics Games had just ended. Then we had the Euros tournament, we had Copa America. I think Gold Cup was also a thing, but no one really pays attention to North American, soccer competitions. Also has some big fights in the UFC. So it just feels really right to talk about competition. And today we have our good friend Shahriar on, and he is, out of all the friends that I know, probably the most suitable to talk about competition. And I'll let Shahriar do a bit of introduction for himself.
Hi, my name's Shahriar. I've been competing in weightlifting for probably 7 years now. You'd think I'd be a lot better at it. But I've competed nationally 3 times. I even have gotten a bronze medal at my last nationals. And hopefully I will qualify for senior nationals soon this year.
Awesome. So I guess we could just start with kind of your experience competing, and then we'll just go off from that. I'm going to talk a bit more about just kind of when you started and how it's changed, maybe some about your training and actually going to competitions and just kind of the overall experience you feel.
What was the first part of that question again?
Just your experience overall, really.
Oh, overall experience competing. Yeah. Well, I don't really know how to put the feeling into words. Mm-hmm. Actually being there on the stage is quite a unique feeling. Although it's changed now, I guess, because I'm more experienced, been doing it for a long time. But I don't get the butterflies and the nervousness. Even at my my last nationals I was at, even though that's a pretty big stage, kind of. Yeah. It's I didn't care too much for it anymore. I assume if I do end up making it to the world level, I will again feel nervous like I was before, but that won't be for a while.
You never know.
Vitamin S, bro. Vitamin S.
Yeah. Vitamin S. Yep.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I guess it makes sense, though, just with time and just having had similar experiences before, you get used to it and just, don't feel the same. I guess, the butterfly is a good way to kind of describe it. So Lorenzo, you've talked about that you've competed in weightlifting as well. So maybe you want to kind of tie into your experience doing it?
I haven't competed in forever. And I also just didn't do it for as long back when I had last competed as well. So it's a little bit not as fresh in my memory as it might be for Shahriar. And I also have less experience total than Shahriar at this point. But personally, I think the biggest thing for competition is that, for me at least, or at least kind of the central point of the competitive experience is that it's kind of a goal, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because without competition, I find that it's harder to push yourself that extra mile. It gives you a good goal to push yourself to your limit, because you want to do the best that you can with competition. Mm-hmm. And I think when I think of competition, that's the most key thing that pops up in my mind that I remember from back then. It's just it's a way to structure your training, keep you on track, so you can progress and get better at your sport, right?
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk more about that and also how that could tie into kind of other aspects of life as well. But before really get into that kind of aspect, I guess I want to talk more about the sport itself, more just competing in sports itself. weightlifting, the sport you guys have competed in, it's very much individual, and even in competition, it's largely competing against yourself. Your previous records were just kind of trying to get the best lift you can, right? Would that be fair for me to say?
Yep.
Yeah. That's a good deal of it. I mean, obviously you have like the times where it's like, oh, he bumped it up by 1 extra kilo for the gold medal. Oh my goodness, or whatever, right? And then you're like, okay, well, dang, do I risk it for the biscuit?
Yeah.
Try to finesse something, or like, oh, maybe I can try moving up to a gold, but then I risk losing my bronze medal if I don't make this. I don't know. Things like that do pop up, but in general, I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's a good point to add. Well, I just want to kind of talk about my experience a little bit competing. I haven't competed individually for many years, but back in the day, I did do Taekwondo, and I went to many competitions. And I did multiple events, but the main 2 events I did was forms and sparring. And in forms, I definitely feel like it's a very similar thing in terms of it's just because forms is really doing a set of moves. The set of moves was already, it's a standardized set of moves, right? So it's judges kind of judging you on your techniques and just the overall kind of pace, just every aspect of the form. And with that, it's very much competing against yourself and doing the best that you can in that sense, and just kind of performing to the best of your ability in something that you've specifically trained and know how to do exactly the same way, basically, right? But the other thing I competed in and did really well in was in Taekwondo Sparring, which is basically fighting with the other person. It's not incredibly violent. It's point based, right? And so it's very different from like other types of combat sport where it's just a bit more brutal, but it's still one-on-one, fighting and just competing with a person very directly like that. And the thing I really feel like differs between the two, I don't even know how to put this into words really, but there is this big difference, and that's kind of what I want to get your opinion on. Kind of, I don't know how much experience you have with that kind of thing, competing with other people directly like that or similar to that, but just kind of the difference between something that's directly against yourself versus something that is more against someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because in a lot of the, it's not even just an individual sports thing. Because, I don't know. It's different. It's different. I don't know how to put it into words either. Because it's like in the fighting example that you gave there, it's, you kind of have to respond to what your opponent is doing. So your actions, to some extent, have to be reactive, right, to what your opponent's doing. Versus like the individual sports, it's all you. It doesn't matter what anybody else does, right? But I don't know. I personally don't have any experience competing in those kinds of sports, so I couldn't tell you.
Well, I mean, if I were to put it just a little bit broader in terms of team sports in general, where you're also just going against other people, like with team sports, there's also like the other element of your teammates and that whole aspect of it, right? Thing. So, but the part where you're directly competing against someone else and there is kind of reacting to what they're doing and then reacting to what you're doing, that aspect still exists. That part is still the same. So maybe just kind of how does that aspect, make the competing experience different from just competing against yourself? Because that's something I've thought about, and it's very difficult to put into words. But at the same time, I definitely feel like there is a big difference, right? Because even if I'm doing something like, more casually, like, back in high school, we did rock climbing club, and even after high school, we did rock climbing just for fun. A lot of that just taking on the challenge, especially bouldering, right? you're just completing a route that's set, and you're just doing
Yeah.
it. Maybe you are trying to doing a better time than someone else, perhaps, but at the same time you're doing it by yourself and you're trying to complete that challenge, right? So
Yeah.
like something I've always thought about is that difference and trying to kind of describe why it is.
I think a lot of it just comes from the unpredictability that facing somebody presents, because they can react in many different ways to what you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you in turn can react many different ways to what they do. Versus when you go bouldering, right?
Mm-hmm.
These athletes, once they're bouldering, they know what to expect, right? They know what's up. They know what they're going to have to do. It's just whether or not they can do it, right? When you go to lift, you know how to do the snatch, you know how to do the clean jerk. It's just whether or not you can do it there in the moment. But
I really say these individual sports are a lot more of a mental game. Because in the end, it's just you're like fighting against yourself, kind of,
Yeah.
Unlike in a team sport, someone else could pick up the slack or whatever. There's a lot less individual stress, I guess. I think that's the best way I can put it.
Yeah, I feel like that's a very good point, because there's someone on your team that might, carry you. There might be someone on the team that really drops the ball and really kind of ruins it for the team. At the same time, you're directly competing against someone else. They're just, especially team sports, when you're facing multiple, opposition. There are just a lot of different factors and a lot of different things each person can do that could really affect it. Whereas with yourself, it is really just that competing against yourself, and very kind of.
It's straightforward. It's just
exactly.
There's no counterplaying between you and the opponent,
Yeah.
And without that, and that's a very dynamic element that's missing in a lot of those individual sports, like weightlifting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like only to the extent of like how much weight you select. Really, that's kind of as far. Yeah, I mean, I guess you can also try to like screw with your opponents. I think that's something some people do, right, Shahriar? If they really want to get a win, they try to like mess up the other person's like wait time or something.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know why they do that at local competitions, but yeah, it is a strategy you can do. I feel like in local competitions it shouldn't be done because people are generally like not diehard lifters that care too much about being the best. They just want to go out there and have a good lifting day.
Yeah. That's pretty funny. I guess the thing I was trying to get at, why I wanted to talk about that before we talk about the aspect of the competition that could be really transferred into personal life and just the benefit of competition, right? So the biggest reason why I want to talk about the aspect of competing against other people, whether that's one-on-one or team versus team, is that I feel like that difference is also seen in other aspects of life, other ways of competition, the benefits you get from competing against yourself, and what benefits might be with competition in general against other people. I think there are some major differences. So I guess kind of maybe we should start off talking about the benefits you get from competition, just from trying to, kind of track your progress, trying to progress, trying to get better, whether that's in your sport or in other aspects. There's something that's more personal and kind of individualized.
I think, I don't know, like when someone has competed in any type of sport, I guess you could kind of tell, like, if they're really into it and they put a lot of effort into it, you can kind of tell like they're more motivated to do things. I feel like competition's a really good motivator, just in general. Like, like even if you're lifting by yourself, right, and you're not really competing or anything, you still want, like, at the end of the day, if you've competed, like, like you set your own goals and you you'll do, like your trainings and, like whatever, in order to reach it. I just think like without the competition part, or experience, a lot of people lack the dedication it takes to actually pull the goal off. So you could set a goal for yourself and never achieve it or never reach it. And then, like that's it, like that's a dead goal. Or, but like rather, I see a lot of people who've competed, set themselves goals for however much weight or how, like whatever, in like sports and stuff. And like they genuinely, they work their ass off for it, man. And so I think it really shows when someone's dedicated, when someone's motivated, and when someone is constantly challenging themselves, rather than being content with whatever they do. So I think that's like a big take from competition to personal life. Yeah. And also like work ethic too. Like it kind of shows in our work ethic as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's like you can see that competition really increases like what's the word? So like say back then, to get into UBC, you wouldn't need a 90% average, But now, because of that competition, the averages keep getting better and better.
Yeah.
And now you need to like really get good grades to get into these good schools, and the good people in the sports are getting even better. It's like the competition keeps driving people. It forces people to get better,
That happens with businesses too. Making better products and services.
You see it everywhere in life.
Yeah, that's
competition really encourages growth.
Yeah, I feel like that's more from competing against other people, and just this more external kind of thing, rather than more individualized and just kind of competing against the stuff you've done previously. It's very much kind of how you stack up against other people. I feel like that's the kind of benefit that you get out of that type of competition,
Well, I mean, even with weightlifting, even though you don't have that kind of same dynamic kind of like element that you have in like say a combat sport, right? Where your actions are kind of like so interlinked with your opponents, right? Despite that, there's still this kind of like drive to like, oh, I'm going to be the one to win. Like I'm going to outlift everybody, even if well, that's if you're going for like the top. So I don't know. What I'm trying to say is that even though, in like say weightlifting, for example, it's not one-on-one or something like that, I think there's still a very strong competitive spirit that'll push you to your limit, regardless of the fact that you're not going up against somebody directly, like in some of the other sports you mentioned. I think like that part of the competitive spirit's still there.
Yeah, the aspect of how you how you stack up against other people is still there. Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. Yeah. So I think what Raymond was saying was specifically true to my experience and just kind of how I see it. I definitely feel like with the people who have had experience competing and have had that kind of they have learned lessons from that really carry over, such as the setting the goals and actually following through with them by dedication, by perseverance, by having work ethic. Some of those very key things are just gonna help you, I guess, kind of carry through to every aspect of your life and everything you end up working on or trying to go for. I feel like that's a huge benefit of have had competed and just thought about competition and had to really work for it yourself. I feel like that is something that you get more in the kind of personalized, kind of individualized idea of competition. Because like even when you are competing against other people, end of the day, what makes you get better is trying to work on yourself and improve that right? That's kind of the main focus that's going to get you there. And then it's looking at other people and how they do, and then trying to do, better, trying to match up, trying to, just get an advantage in one way or other against them. So I definitely feel like that is a huge thing that people take away from competing, like Riemann was saying. And I definitely feel like that's more of a personalized, individualized kind of, it's from that aspect.
See what you mean, 100%, 100%.
No,
how about the why there?
No, I thought you were gonna say something more rather than just what if someone else was gonna start saying something.
Yeah, I was waiting for Lorenzo to continue.
No, sir, that's all I had to add.
Well, thank you for thinking that was a good point.
Anytime, bro. Anytime.
Do you want to say something, Shaw, about just kind of benefits and competition in general? It might not be kind of what we're talking about here, but it might be something else that's like really beneficial from competition.
Well, definitely stress management is a huge thing you'll figure out from competition. Like, and how to deal with your emotions, really. It's like in weightlifting, sometimes you'll miss your first 2 lifts, and like that's like the worst feeling ever, because if you miss the next one, like you're disqualified. Like you're just out of the competition. I remember my first competition. I didn't even know that was a rule. Like if you miss all your lifts, you're disqualified. Like, I had no idea. So I come out of the competition and I missed my first 2 lifts. First competition ever, missed my first 2 lifts. And then like the third one, I'm literally, I go back onto the platform and like I can't see because my eyes are so watered, because I was like, I couldn't handle the emotions that were going on.
Yeah.
Damn, bro, that's crazy. I didn't know about this.
Yeah, and like it's happened a few times.
Oh yeah, you bummed out a lot.
Twice. But yeah, like you. I remember, like, I think one of the times I did bomb out. Like I went on the platform and in my mind I had already given up. And it's like, that's obviously not the play, you know?
Yeah.
You don't want to be giving up too early.
Not.
And then that'll affect other aspects of your life. Say just in work. You work in a fast-paced place, like, I don't know, McDonald's, like, that's hard work. And if you don't have good stress management, like, you can't cut it there. Like, when I worked at McDonald's, so many people had to quit in the back, in the kitchen, because they could not handle the stress and work of it.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
But I was able to. I think because of the weightlifting, I was able to survive it for a few years.
I do think the McDonald's benefited weightlifting.
Oh, for sure. And yeah. And then when I went on to actually work in a real kitchen, I think the weightlifting helped with that as well. And I think that also helped with the weightlifting, because...
It does kind of go both ways,
Yeah.
No, I definitely get what you're saying with that mental aspect, with managing your emotions, dealing with stress. I guess personally, for the most part, I've always been pretty good at that. And when I got better, when I get better at it, it was even more kind of natural to just kind of do it. But I remember just competing, especially in sparring, that like if you get like some early points on your opponent, you do see a lot of them just kind of giving up. You do kind of see it in kind of their eyes. You do see it kind of body language and just kind of how they kind of stand, how they move. Like it just feels like, okay, well, it's already done for them. I just have to get this point. And then you know, like, and also like if you're watching like high level competition, you also do kind of see it in some people, whether that's combat sports, whether that's like team sports, like basketball. You definitely do see it in some people who they're just like, you feel like they've given up already while the competition is still happening. That's a very real thing that happens. And I feel like just going through experiences like that, having, either dealt it with yourself or seeing other people that you're competing with deal with it. And just going through that experience, you really do learn a lot about kind of yourself, your emotions, how to handle that with stress, and also with pressure, which is a huge thing. And just also dealing with maybe external aspects, what other aspect of your life outside of the sport or the thing you're competing in, just kind of how to manage kind of really just your emotions, many different emotions, but overall emotions would just be a generalized term for it, right?
Yeah. Honestly, like when you're competing, like I feel like the first few times you're nervous, right,
Yeah.
man? Because you've never been put into that situation of like,
Mhm.
you know, where everything you do matters, right?
Yeah.
And you're held accountable for what you do, like on the spot. So I think it's a really good way, you know, like Sharia and you say, like stress management, as well as like, you know, like knowing how to deal with your emotions, you know, at the time, like whether you know how to calm yourself down, or you know how to like stop, you know, or like I don't know. I feel like at a certain point, like you kind of have to stop, you know, all the external, like I guess pressure as
Mhm.
well. So you know, like you see the crowd, right? Like you see all these people, like, and then you know, like you feel pressure to do well, but that's like, you know, like it's not that you don't want to, but it's that you want to for yourself, right? And having all these people there can lead to like improper lifts, or you know, like you get excited, you know, as well, like with them, right? It's like you gotta put everything aside and kind of just focus on what you're doing. So like it also helps, yeah, it also helps with focusing
Mhm.
on tasks. um you kind of have more a linear kind of I guess what do you call it?
It's tunnel vision almost, like your tunnel vision on
Yeah.
exactly what it is that you want to focus on.
Yeah, yeah, like like all your brain power, you know, like everything goes straight into whatever you're doing, and that's it. And then once you're done, you almost feel like you're relieved, or like, you know, it's like when you're holding your breath for a while under the pool, right, under the water, and your friend's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna time you, dude, and you're competing against them, and then like you know, you're counting down in your head, you're like, okay, okay, and then like when you're finally done, you're like, oh, you know, that breath, that fresh breath of air, man. um like you feel that. And I just think, you know, you're able to deal with external pressures and just your own emotions, you know how to figure them out a lot better overall, I'd say, coming from like being, you know, competitive in like, you know, any sport, or
Mhm.
you know, any way. You know, this goes for debating as well. Like, you know, if you're debating, that's definitely something you have to manage,
Yeah.
which is, you know, your patience. And you know, you don't want to start yelling.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
want to start screaming at the other team. It's like, no. Like you start just cussing them out.
Imagine that.
Bro, you lose and you start cussing out the judges. It's like, bro. um yeah, so like, and you know, if you let your emotions overwhelm you, you like it's a very high possibility that you lose just from that,
Mhm.
right? Because your mental state, you know, like you need that to be fortified. Whereas like when you know, you feel, I guess, like mentally vulnerable, that's when like anything goes, right? You could be like, okay, you know, like you have that mindset of losing, right? Like you said, you know, you go into it, you're like, okay, well, it's my last attempt, you know, my last lift. I don't think I could do this lift. And that, like, I don't know, I'd say 70% of the time, like you end up not doing it because you don't really believe, and like your body's already given up, you know,
Mhm.
your muscles are less tense than before. It, you know, you're ready to for it to end. So yeah.
And the mental aspect is absolutely huge. And nowadays, you just actually see a lot more professional athletes in various sports and competitions who are talking about it, kind of how they deal with it, the struggles they've had with it, and just kind of putting out the awareness of just the importance of mental health and the pressure, the stress that comes with competing at high levels and taking these things seriously like that. And the other thing you said that, well, I guess you didn't say it directly, but something that I want to tie into what you're saying is that competition also really teach you how to kind of how to win, how to be a winner, how to be a loser, how to not be a sore loser, and how to win with grace, and how to deal with the emotions that come with winning and come with losing, that comes with success and come with failure. So not only the kind of emotions you deal with while you're competing, but also the results of the competition. I feel like it's a huge aspect of competition, obviously, and also a huge aspect of what you could get out of competing.
Yeah, like I think a lot of people who come out on top are generally like very humble. Um, they're very confident in their abilities, and they know, they know, because from experience they know what they can and will do, and they know when it's okay, like it's a possibility that I won't make this, right? And they stay humble, they stay I guess just emotionless almost,
Stoic.
about things. Yeah, they feel stoic about it. It's just like they don't let they control their emotions really well, right? um and I feel like that also comes and like benefits your personal life after being in a competitive state for so long. Like I'm sure Shaw is very humbled about his lifts, right? Even when it's a bad day, like he knows he could probably, go back up and improve, right? And like I just think that when you make a mistake after like a competitive, background, you tend to, instead of like, being down and like, running it through your head like endlessly, you kind of build from that, right? You move on, and then you see what you can improve.
Exactly, yeah.
And then that's kind of it. Yeah, it's a very healthy mindset to have in life, to always looking to improve, to always going forward, rather than looking back and be like, oh, like I wish I did this, or I wish that I did that, and then like having that constantly just pressuring you that just keeps pressuring yourself even more, and stresses you even more, right? Because what happens if you keep thinking, oh, like my last lift, my last competition, I did this, like, oh, this competition, like I really hope I don't do this, I really hope this doesn't happen again. And then you start getting nervous, and then you become a wreck, man. You lose sight of your goal.
Yeah.
100%. No cap.
No cap, for sure, yeah. That mindset is definitely so important. It really goes into like basically every aspect of your life, work, school, yeah, just being like, okay, this happened, learn from it, move on, that's a very powerful mindset to have, and competition is a really good way for someone to be able to develop that mindset. Do you have anything to add, Lorenzo, Shaw? No.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it kind of reminds me a little bit of what Shahriar was talking about, how it forces you to get better, right?
Okay.
To stay in a competitive mindset, once you take an L, you have to grow from it and learn from it, right? If you get caught up in it, then that's not a competitive mindset, because you're just going to be stuck on it. You're not going to move on from it.
Yeah.
And then you won't be as competitive.
Yeah.
So yeah, just by its very nature, competition is just crazy.
Yeah. And if you keep thinking of what once was, you'll never improve because you're just constantly putting yourself down as well.
Yeah.
You know,
Like you gotta learn from it, obviously, and you gotta analyze and be like, okay, well, I had this problem because X, Y, and Z. Okay, so I need to address this problem, but you can't let it establish like a mental block, but you can't let it affect your confidence. You know, you have to be just as confident every single time, if not more confident every time.
Yeah, like in basketball, there's a saying called shooters shoot, because you're either gonna make the shot, or you're gonna miss the shot. But as someone who's known for shooting the ball and being good at it, and who trains at it regularly, what you know is that if you just shoot enough, because you're shooting with the same form, you've done this for years, that you keep practicing that. And yeah, you could miss a bunch of shots in a row, but if you just keep shooting them, you just keep doing it, you just keep believing that you're gonna make it. Eventually, you are just gonna make it because you got that skill, and statistically, that's just what's going to happen. So as long as you believe in yourself and just keep doing it, and just having that confidence, having that belief, that's so important for competing at a high level and being able to come back from unsuccessful stretches.
Yeah, I learned that quite well in weightlifting. You just gotta keep putting the work in, and eventually it'll come to you. Like just this past, maybe it was 2 years. Like I kept putting in work, and I just wanted to keep giving up because I felt like it wasn't coming to me. Nothing I'm doing is working. Yeah. And then maybe just a few months ago, it finally happened. Like,
what happened?
The work's paid off.
Trust the process. That's like they say.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
But
yes, sir.
the process is definitely hard and stressful and very unpredictable. You know?
Well, other thing I wanted to get into is not quite so individualized. It's actually very much in team settings, and I personally had some experience competing in team sports, mostly rugby, and in team kind of environments, mostly rugby, but also I've competed in quotations with the jazz band, as we have entered. I guess they are called some of them are called festivals, others are called competitions. But I think, there are many aspects to it, really, right, that are different from competing as just individual, whether that is against ourselves or directly against other people. But in team settings, I guess the first thing I'll get into is something our friend Georgie said to me when I was talking to him about kind of playing on sports teams in high school, and also outside of high school in the local teams, because he played volleyball, basketball, and also baseball, right? So one thing he said that for him that he didn't actually enjoy about playing the team sports is that he just felt a lot of stress from feeling like he can't let the team down, and just feeling that part of responsibility of kind of you need to be accountable for certain things as a part of this collective, towards this collective goal. And I feel like that is something very interesting. And we kind of touched upon this in other episodes. I forget which one, but just this idea of working towards the same thing, and perhaps kind of how you might feel doing it, whether that's a pressure, but also just kind of being a part of community, and just the kind of, I guess, the stressful part, and also the very beneficial and the very, positive parts of that experience. If you have any thoughts on that,
I feel like when we first started joining like a team sport, or any team competition, you hold yourself reliable for more than more than you should be, right? Because it is a team sport at the end of the day, right? So when I first did football, I used to be like, oh man, I have to do as much as I can, right? I always try I gotta carry the team on the back, like that mindset where it's like I have to do my absolute best, like like with everything. And then like you kind of start like holding yourself responsible for like your teammates as well when they don't do something like like well, like you're like, oh, like maybe I could have done this, which might affect them in some way,
Mhm.
right? Or like maybe I should have like called it out to them or something. But like at the end of the day, like I learned that like later on, like you should focus, because it's a team sport. Well, every team sport's
Yeah.
different, but every team sport, the individuals on the team, every position has their own job to do, and you kind of have to just you kind of have to just believe in your teammates that they will do their job, their part for the team, and then that kind of leads into like you believing in
Mhm.
yourself. Like you start focusing on your part, your job, and like knowing what you're gonna do, and that's that. You stop focusing on like everything, and you start focusing on more individual
Yeah.
play, rather than like having all that stress about everything else. um like external like pressures and stuff, like bro, like people on the bleachers,
Yeah.
right? Like when they're like boo, or like like when they're like ah, like when they're where you could tell like they're like, okay, like like they've given up on the team or something, right? Like that plays a big part too. It's like, oh, my team's doing shit, dude, what am I gonna do? Right? So like I don't know, like you kind of, it's, I feel like a lot of the things are interchangeable, you know. But I think the big part about it is just focusing on your role, and like you could care less what other people do, as long as you do your role. You've done your job. You've done the
Hmm.
best you could, right? Um, yeah,
I mean, from my experience,
that's
that
that.
is definitely like the biggest focus, like knowing your role and being able to do your
Hmm.
role. You know, just that is absolutely huge in team sports, and also just team competitions in general. In jazz band, it was a huge thing to like know your part, and you really feel like you are responsible for that, both by yourself but also by everyone that's involved. And one of the things that we did in jazz band was for each section, each instrument uh, belongs in like a section is like everyone who plays the same instrument, right? So everyone who plays the same instrument in that section, like someone in within the section will kind of, well, we didn't necessarily do it that much um, outside of class, but just because it was actually a huge, it was a very important thing to do. We actually took some class time and had that, and where one person was kind of, I guess, the captain or the leader or whatnot of the section, and they would have kind of hold practice for just the section to run through the parts. So they're holding the entire section accountable, but also everyone within the section are holding each other accountable. And then you just get to the point where you really know that, okay, I need to know my part. Like that is the most important thing. That is what I need to be able to do. And then from there, that's kind of where greatness and great teamwork gets built from. It's really just starts with everyone knowing what they're supposed to do and being able to do them, right? Then that's how we get
Hmm.
sections together and have them play together. And that's where you work on team work aspect, where listening to other sections to adjust your dynamics, make sure you're not overplaying, and also to be able to know that, okay, we need a bit more from us over here because our part is important, so we actually need to you know be a bit more stronger, play a little bit, with more power, right? So that aspect of holding yourself accountable, I feel like it is very much like in individual sports, but in these teams where there is that aspect of knowing there are just a lot of people holding you accountable, and at the same time you're not only holding yourself accountable, but you're kind of also holding other people accountable. But there is that dynamic where you're like, okay, if you're overly kind of stressed about what other people are doing, then overall that's kind of negative to your own performance and probably to the performance of your whole team as well. So there is that balance and there is that mental aspect to it as well.
Yeah, like I can imagine that, like especially like like being in a jazz band, like you gotta
Yeah,
know
man.
your part, man. Yeah, yeah, bro. And like it's also like something else. It's like I want to touch on is when you're in a team sport, you kind of there is that independent, like role of it. Like you're competing against yourself, basically, right? Um, you kind of like you kind of end up just focusing or like thinking about it more as an individual sport. You know, like yeah, like if you have your role, you kind of think about that only, right? Before you worry about everything else, right? Like maybe you adjust whatever you're doing according to what your teammates might do, right? Um, but other than that, like it's you, your part, and whoever else you're competing against, right? So like your counter role. So like I don't know. I find that it really helps thinking about it more as an individual role, an individual part, rather than like a team
Yeah.
part, right? It's like, oh, I'm part of this team. It's like, nah, like I am part of this team, but like this is my job, where I gotta do what it takes. I just gotta do it right, and as long as I do it right, like your team, like your team starts to believe like that, okay, he's doing his part, I need to do my
Yeah.
part. So it's kind of like a chain
It's also like a
reaction.
morale boost,
that it-
having someone doing their job properly. Okay, we got this. We're locked in. He's doing their job. You're doing your job. And I could definitely relate to that in like rugby, where I, well, not necessarily majority, but at least half the time I was playing as a winger, and really you need to make sure that no one gets by you on the wing. Like you either push them out of bounds, you make the tackle, or you make them push inside towards the rest of your team. Like that is a very big aspect of your job on the defensive side of the play, right? Like you just, like no matter what, you make sure they don't get by you like that, right? And similarly, when I play, intramural soccer, I play a fullback, so on either side. But I also go into attack sometimes. It's very dynamic just because the sport is very dynamic, and also at this level of competition, people just play different roles. But but as like a defender in soccer, other thing you really kind of learn is that like either the ball go past you or the player goes past you, never both, right? Like you make sure. That's why in the Euro finals you saw Giorgio Chiellini from the Italian side pulling on like the English player's shirt, making sure that guy goes down. Took a yellow card for that. Like that's his job. No matter what, either the ball goes past you or the defender, where the attacker goes past you. Never both, and hopefully neither. But never both. And he made sure of that. Like it's just a huge thing of knowing kind of what needs to be done and doing it. And that aspect obviously also translate into other aspects of your life, into the work environment, especially into group projects, especially. Shahriar, you've worked in the kitchen. I have also worked in the kitchen. And one thing is it's very much a team kind of environment. But at the same time, you also have a pretty clear-cut role of what you need to do. So there's definitely a huge focus of you being able to do your job, right?
Yeah, there's a sort of sense that like you don't want to let the team down, Yeah, pushes you forward.
It's a really good confidence booster too. Like once you see other people are like, yeah, they're doing their job. Like it's time to do mine. It's almost like a wake up call. Some people, like, it takes a little bit to get into it. When they first play their first game or something, they're like, okay, like I need to do this, I need to do this, or this, or this. They give themselves too many options and just too many things to think about. Whereas, like once they're like, okay, he did his job, he did exactly what, you know, the leader said, or, like the head said, or coach said, then you're like, okay, well, the coach told me to do this, then I'm gonna do that, right? And then it kind of just like works out, like you also, another thing is like you have to have a really good leader, right? Someone who communicates really well with the team. And when you have that all together, you get a really well structured team. Whereas like if the leader doesn't care, right? The leader's like, okay, you do this, maybe this indecisiveness, then you're gonna be indecisive too, because you're worrying about what the leader did say and didn't say, right? And so you need someone who's really confident in that, right? So having a good coach really helps as well. And then you kind of like learn to trust, like the information you're given. You kind of like, even though it might not be always 100% the right play, you do it anyways because that's what you're given. So it helps you follow through orders or like goals that's set for the team. And like for the kitchen, I used to work in the kitchen too, and you have to rely on your team, like yeah, like everyone has their own role. If you don't do your role, everyone knows.
There's no getting away from it.
Oh my god. Like so like you're kind of like, okay, well, like today, like this is my job, I have to do it, man. And yeah, like you kind of, it's really good to know to hold yourself accountable for your mistakes. And I think that's a really big part as well from team sports, right? Or team play. It's just you hold yourself accountable and you improve, upon it. You realize, okay, I did this wrong, or like I messed up, the team. And instead of feeling bad about it, you gotta realize it's like, okay, then how do I, like bring it back, right, to where it was? Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of my thoughts on it.
No, definitely. I think having some, in a competition, having something on the line, you definitely just get all these benefits out of it. We talk about the benefits you get out of it, just in individual sports, and also these other aspects you get out of it in team sports. Like ultimately, I think it's that competition and that just feeling like something is on the line, and there's that specific goal that you're working towards, whether by yourself or with a team. I feel like that's really kind of make everything just a little bit more serious, carry a bit more weight, and really gets you to learn these lessons and get these experiences that you could carry over to other aspects of your life. And specifically to what you were saying, with the first part about what you're saying about kind of people overthinking and trying to do like too much, or having too many options and being indecisive, right? Like in sports, so often that you see coaches tell the players that you're overthinking, right? Like that's a very often, like you hear that so often. Like it's a very, very common thing that coaches or other leaders have to tell the players, especially when you go into a higher level of play and you're inexperienced at that level. You'll definitely see a lot of players who are kind of in that boat where they are being either indecisive, or they're trying to do too much, where they're not quite, kind of simplifying it down to very specific jobs that need to be done. And I feel like it's a huge aspect of just tasks in general, being able to just zone in on the specifics of what needs to be done and just doing those things, right? And I feel like just kind of just wanted to specifically point out that little aspect of it, of what you were saying, just because I felt like it was important.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Like, like I'd rather be doing one job well, really, perfectly, than two jobs decently, right? Like, yeah, and like being that again, like in the kitchen, you can't just take over another person's part as well. You can't be like, okay, yo, let me help you with that as well as doing, what I'm doing. Like you can't overstep, your position unless you're asked to. And I feel like a lot of people like overthink, and they start doing like other people's jobs for them, and it's just like, what are you doing? You're messing their job up, right? Just to compensate for what you're thinking. And that kind of destructures the whole entire, like the whole entire thing. It's like, bro, your team's gonna hate you. Like, it's like, dude, it just doesn't work out. But yeah, yeah.
Do either of you have anything to add, Lorenzo, Shaw?
Not in
No
particular.
cap.
No cap.
No cap, bro.
Yeah, because I know the two of you haven't had like as much, I guess, experience competing in team settings.
Yeah, I mean, esports, bro. Esports, Gotta hear from the sports. Yes, sir. Yeah, no.
No? Okay. Well,
I just agree with everything that's been said so far. Everything has been said so far sounds pretty,
yeah.
pretty sound to me.
too.
So I don't have anything to add.
Okay.
Especially being, without me being in like team sports and whatnot, it's hard for me to comment on that.
Well, okay.
I feel like a lot
Even
of it
in,
is
like,
also. I feel like a lot of it isn't exclusive to like team sports. It's just like to any team in general, any team that's trying to accomplish one specific goal. Then there's that. Then you get that sort of like mutual trust in between everybody that they'll do their best. They'll do their part to try to achieve this goal, right? And I think it just like we've been talking about, it just combines really well with those competitive settings.
Yeah, I think what you said is really that kind of what Shar was saying earlier as well, is that it does go both ways a decent bit with like between these competitions and just other settings like team projects in school, or just working within a team, whatever job you're at.
Yeah, definitely. And like I wanted to add on to Lorenzo's comment about esports,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, like you kind of notice like when you're playing as a team, and like and even in a game, like you make sure your team gets the information, like you pass on information that's important to them, right? So like if you need help, or like you need like you need some time or something, like you let your teammates know, so like they buy you some time, or they kind of like they're there to protect you, or like to be there for you. But if you just if you need help but you don't call it out, then like chances are like you're just gonna die, right? Talking about games here, you don't just die in real life, but
something interesting about that. It's like, okay, so back when I would play League, it is common. So like, your opponent, if they leave their area, they could be going to a different area. So it's very common to say that that person's missing. And sometimes when you're playing with the boys, team of 5, so we're all in voice chat, and then you get killed and they didn't call it out. It's like, yeah, sure, it can be their fault, but also you could have just been better,
Yeah.
So it's like, how much is it team and how much is it yourself, because you can always be better. Like, I could have saw the map. I could have no-slept myself. Does it have to be his responsibility to do that for me, So it's weird. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, well, that sounds like something that there's no like downside to doing it, and the potential upside for doing it or the potential downside for not doing it. That's just, I feel like that'd be one thing would be like, yo, you didn't call it, bro. What the fuck? Come on, man.
No,
Call
it
next
definitely
time.
makes sense
Yeah.
for
I
someone
don't
to
play
do
League,
it.
though,
It
so I
definitely
don't
sounds
know.
like
Yeah.
it would make sense, and like it would be kind of established in your role if like you were to actually talk about it beforehand, and set up a really
Well, yeah,
kind
no,
of
it's
a team, right?
I'm pretty sure it's like a pretty standard thing, and not even just League, but I think like another MOBAs like Dota. I think like if you see that your dude, because the dude that you're supposed to be facing off with in the lane, he's not there. Well, he's got to be somewhere, so might as well let the team know.
Yeah.
They might get destroyed by like two dudes ganging up on them or something.
And I besides that, like I also want to like touch on like taking too many challenges, right? Or like taking challenges when you know you shouldn't, right? So like like a team fight or something, like your team's losing, you should know when to pull back, and not have your ego in the way. And I think ego plays a big part of it. Like I wanted to touch on this earlier, but then I guess I forgot to point it out. But you have to set your ego aside, right? Like we're talking about how like your emotions, you gotta keep your emotions in check, right? Like if you fail some lifts or whatever, right? You're gonna feel bad about it either way. But it's that part of not letting it hurt your ego, your confidence, that really like helps you overall to grow, rather than feeling really bad about it, holding yourself accountable. Like I guess like for a long period of time, it's like it happened, you gotta let it go. And it's like, yeah, like it's like, oh, you're losing a team fight, man. Like you either continue to lose, like you either go through with it, lose like your leverage at all time, like all your leverage, the game, maybe, or you pull back, regroup, right, and like process like what just happened, and like realize, like communicate like what needs to be fixed, what needs to be improved on, like why did that happen, rather than like, oh yo dude, like the fucking it's like, nah dude, nah, we got a big dick dump, dude, big dick energy, dude, come on.
WQM.
Yeah, we gonna let him do us like that? Nah. So
I'm thirsty. I'm chasing. He's one shot. Classic.
Yeah, man. So it's like yeah, that's what I wanted to touch on.
The last thing I wanted to get into before we go into the highlights section is that I want to kind of ask you about, Shahriar, just the logistics of training and competing, because there's obviously, commute, whether that is, trying to train at a place that's going to benefit you the most, and also going to competitions are obviously going to be all over the place. And something I wanted to talk about in a different episode is kind of youth sports and kind of the cost of that, especially here. But I do want to just go into specifically about kind of the financial side of training, whether that is, I don't know, coaching or equipment, or joining competitions, or traveling, how the sponsor is here, how the sponsor kind of is might be in other places, like say, I don't know, place like China, where there's like state sponsoring and whatnot. It's just kind of that kind of the logistics side of competing and training for competition.
Yeah. So, as for weightlifting goes, it's a pretty cheap sport. Like, say the membership with the weightlifting association, I think it's like $100 a year. Competitions can vary from like, I think 60 to 100, but you're not competing that often, right? Probably like at most 6 times in a year. And mean, obviously flights are going to be expensive, but if you do any sports, you're going to have to fly, and that's going to be expensive. If you can find, like, weightlifting's not that accessible, but if you happen to live near a gym with the equipment, like, you know, that's big cost taken out of it, because the most expensive part is the bar and the plates. But obviously, if gym has that, you don't need to own that yourself. As for like personal equipment goes, like weightlifting shoes can be up to $250, but like I've had a $100 pair for like 5 years, and they're at the end of their life now. I need to buy a new pair, but still, like 5 years for a pair of shoes. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, and other equipment's super cheap. Just like the singlet, probably $100. That'll work for life until you probably grow too big for it, and then you'll have to buy another one.
Oh, sure. You remember that one guy at that one weightlifting competition that
left skid marks in your singlet?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, that never happened again.
That did happen, but yeah.
No, nobody left skid marks on my singlet. What are you kidding me?
No, okay. So you got your singlet used.
And
you pulled up to the competition and you never washed it. And then you looked into it and there were skid marks.
Yeah, you're gonna kill me, bro.
What were you gonna say, Lorenzo?
We're gonna cut that.
We're not cutting anything out.
Lorenzo wore skid marked pants in a competition.
I had to, man. They wouldn't let me wear my regular clothes anymore, bro. After like your first 2 competitions, you gotta wear the singlets. So I'm like, all right, for 2 minutes, I'm not gonna throw this competition away just because something stupid like this. And I must have been washed, I'm sure, but it was just residual. I don't know, something.
Residual skid marks.
No, I was gonna talk about. Remember that one competition where like some dude bombed out or just in the middle and he got super pissed, so he checked his Adidas singlet in the garbage. You remember that one?
Oh, I know him. Yeah, I train with him now still.
Oh yeah.
No, he was retiring from weightlifting. No, he's a really cool guy. At first, I didn't like him, but then once he got better at English and stopped being like,
does he want a
edgy?
singlet back? I still have it.
No, like he has a new singlet.
You kept
but
it?
Yeah, he actually retired. He retired from. Well, singlets are like $100. Why wouldn't you keep it? Yeah, he retired, but then I don't know. He's kind of funny. He retires every other month.
What a guy!
Conor McGregor.
Oh my god.
Yeah. All right, so returning to the previous question, more logistic stuff. Well, due to how, unless you're a big money man and can spend whatever you want, you might have to do quite a commute to a gym that has the equipment. Like for my whole life, I've had to bus an hour one way to the gym. And now that I moved out here, still gotta bus an hour. But then if I want to go to my old gym, that's like a 2.5 hour bus one way. I'll still do it sometimes because it's like the atmosphere of that gym is unmatched, and I love the boys there. So yeah, I mean, if you're commuting, it obviously sucks, but if you have a car, it's no problem. That's why you gotta get your N, Lorenzo.
Amen. First you talk about that singlet story, and now you do this. This is uncalled for. This is just uncalled for, man. I thought we were friends, bro. Come on.
Well, this actually ties into, just want to bring up, I do want to talk about walkable cities and just the design of cities in general in another episode, just so the audience know for future. We will be talking about that. It's very interesting. But the thing is, I'm kind of surprised on how cheap weightlifting is. Like a pair of $100 shoes for 5 years, that's ridiculous. Like if you're gonna play basketball or play soccer or football or rugby, like you're the shoes, they're not going to just last that long, right?
Yeah, I mean, you just do so
Yeah.
much running, right,
Yeah.
in those sports versus weightlifting, where your shoes just don't take that much abuse because you're basically just stomping on your shoes for the most part. When you do the split jerk, I might put a little stress on them, but I mean, they're built for like one thing. They're built for like two movements, basically. And that's what they're good for. So if you only do those two movements, they'll last you a while.
Yeah, and also just kind of the fee to join competitions is actually, you know, lower than I had thought, just because I guess playing other sports and if you were to join a team that is actually good or play in a higher competition like kind of level, a league that plays at a higher level, like in North America at least, it is often pretty costly. So yeah, weightlifting is just cheaper than I imagined. That's pretty cool. And it would be even more cool if it's actually more accessible in terms of the gyms and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's it's becoming more common now because of CrossFit. But the thing is, CrossFit gyms are very expensive. Like right now, I have 2 gym memberships. The one, my old gym, it's $65 a month, and the gym that I go to most of the time is $45 a month, and they're both 24-hour locations. So like that's really good pricing. But like say a CrossFit gym can cost you more than 100, and it's not 24 hours. It'll probably give you like a 2-hour time
Lorenzo
slot.
and
I know,
his,
yeah.
It's like,
the one he doesn't even go to.
Hey, man, we don't talk about it. I don't have that membership anymore. They got great people out there, awesome gym. But I may or may not have paid for like $100 a month membership and only gone for like a week or two. But I had the membership for like 6 months or longer, or a whole year. So
sometimes you just need the membership. Like, I remember back when I almost quit weightlifting, I still kept paying for that membership. The $65 membership for like 5 months. I never even went to the gym. And then eventually, like, I just got back into it.
I mean, if you never fully let go,
good thing you kept that membership.
If you're always just holding on to a piece of it, I think it does make the process easier to get back into training, competing, and whatnot. But also, Lorenzo, isn't that gym run by like Matt Dye or something? Yeah, I used to train Taekwondo with him. He's my sparring partner a lot of the times. Yeah, pretty cool guy.
He's got his own gym now.
Never been to it.
Yeah.
Bro, how do you get the money to have a Tesla and open a gym at like, how old was he at the time? Like 23?
I don't know,
22?
probably maybe got a loan or something. I don't know. A loan to start a gym? What? A loan to start a gym? Is that controversial?
In that location, I highly doubt you would like.
Well, because Semiamu, what is the athletic club, had to move out of that same spot, and they already had. He partnered with some dude, because some dude already had like a Taekwondo thing there. I don't know if you know, right?
I went to that location once. Yeah. It was my last time. my last ever time training was at that location. It was the new location because they moved. So I went to the new location once. Yeah. And then I stopped.
And then that location is now...
It's by Wooden Spoon, right?
Man, I forgot what the gym's name is called.
Yeah. Okay, I'm thinking about the right one then. Interesting.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Is there anything else anyone want to talk about? Because if not, we'll go into the highlight of the week section and finish it off. Nope. All right. Well, if anyone wants to start with their highlight of this week, let us know. Lorenzo, maybe?
Apex Season 10, baby. Let's go. Yes, sir. Nah, I'm not. Been pretty chill week.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Ray, what about you?
Well, Season 10, of course. But also, I hosted a pool party. Last night for my friend's birthday, as well as for another friend who might be flying to Paris. First school year, yeah. So at that, and then other highlights, a lot of puking. Okay, a lot, but
I know the feeling, bro. I know the feeling.
but yeah, overall, pretty good. Pretty good.
Nice.
Not
What about
bad.
you, Shaw? Yeah.
All right, Shahriar, let's hear it.
I got a new
Nice.
bed and my
That
back
is
doesn't
awesome.
hurt as
That
much
is
anymore.
huge.
Hey,
Yeah,
let's
that's
go.
blessed.
That's
Honestly.
big. That's big.
Bless, man. And before I get into my highlight, I do just want to say that Paris is worth visiting probably for most people, but at the same time, it is also extremely overrated. Now that we got that out of the way, let's get into my highlight, and it's pretty much the same as last week, except now my final report is all done and handed in. I just have a final presentation on Friday, which is just based on the
Hey.
report, so it's pretty easy. And I've also done a presentation already that is 10 minutes. This one's gonna be 15 minutes, so it's gonna be pretty, straightforward to prepare for. And after that, I'll be flying back to Vancouver. The 14th. Yeah, it'll be nice.
Hey, let's go.
And the other highlight,
Let's hype, let's hype.
is that Messi did indeed leave Barcelona. He's at
Oh,
Paris now. Yeah, PSG, man. Picked him up for free. Didn't have to pay because Barca is just bad at managing. I can't believe the whole situation. But yeah, absolutely insane. Arguably the best player to ever do it. Moving to a different club on a free transfer is basically unheard of. Yeah, so that's definitely a highlight just because I'm a fan of the sport. And yeah, that's going to be it from me. And I think that's going to be it from us this week. So I want to thank Shahriar for coming onto this podcast, for giving us some insights on his
Thank you, sir.
competition experience. And we will see you guys. Well, I guess we won't actually see you, but we will be back next week for another episode of the Young and Foolish podcast. Thank you for listening.